Some tools I've used over the years and some oddballs. This is one I've made probably a dozen times or more, thrown out. It's a hook for the fuel line and chainsaw fuel tanks. Let me get rid of these shining all over. No, this one's what? Probably longer than it needs to be, 8 inches. No, 6. Just about 6 inches long. All this is to have something to hold, reach down in. Now sometimes you turn, I've got one of these, I've turned 180 degrees on the hook. Because sometimes it's easier to go backwards than forwards, but just an idea when you're working on your own home chainsaw and you need to change your fuel filter. Now, the only thing you need to do, though, to remember is that, well, sometimes this end, but always this end has to be sanded and rounded off. I just made this for show the other day, so it's still pretty sharp. If you can use a coat hanger without this coating, you're better off, because this coating can come off in the gas and cause you trouble. You say, my fuel filter will take care of it. Well, the problem is with a coating, no, they can go into the fuel filter and actually re-glue itself to the fuel filter. So you want to strip it. This is all I had at the time. The ones I use in the shop, I use the silver. They might be plated, but they're basically uncoated. They don't have any polymer or something on them. So that's one. This thing is great. How big is this? I don't know. There's a handle end you make to fit your hand, but this end is, no, it's from the back to the front, it's 1/2 inch. You don't want to get it too tight. You want to be able to release. You don't want it to grab the hose. And sometimes on a smooth hose, it's nice that it slips because it'll come into the hook and you want to get it up out of there. If you're hooked too far in, then you can slide it up while you're pulling it up. Some of them have ribs, so it's a moot point, but you need it at least a 1/2 inch open, even with the ribs, to be able to grab the darn thing and not get it pinched in there. Another one I've talked about a lot is not this in particular. This was one I bought to use on high energy ignitions that would probably work today as well, but we got these in the late 80s and 90s. They had them in the 80s early as well, but this one actually has no center electrode. I don't even know how deep that thing is. I don't think I can get anything down there. But what it is, the design of it is to have an open hole, and the actual metal is way down in there. It's designed to cut the 50,000 volts, as I remember, to jump up out of there and come across from the up the hole and over to fire over to here as a ground. It used to have a gator clip on it, but that broke off 30 years ago or more. But this is an Eklund IST1. I doubt very much you'll be able to get one anymore. There it is backwards. IST1. Ignition System Test 1. Most of them that I buy, aftermarket, well, whatever, the center hole in there, the electrode just pokes out the hole enough, and that is a wide gap from the center to the side. But on most applications, chainsaws, small engine, old farm tractors, you want that wide gap, just like a D21 spark plug. Tear that side electrode off. You want that wide gap. Why? Well, you can say it's only spark at 30 thousandths, or 20. Some people are purists. It's got to be 25. No spark plug should ever fire at 25 unless you have insufficient spark. Magnetos easily jump 30 thousandths. The bigger the kernel you have, the better chance of fire that you get. 5 thousandths doesn't sound like much, but from what I've seen over the years, I started using 30 thousandths long before I know anybody else ever recommended it. And it made a big difference on my old Ford tractors and some others I worked on. When I worked at an Oliver Alice Chalmers dealer, trust me, those two companies had some of the best gas engines ever built. And if you set those plugs at 30 thousandths, let me tell you, they were sweet runners. Especially the Olivers with that Waukesha, smooth. But power, Alice. And Alice had a pop to it. Woo! Especially the four-bangers. They had kind of a roar. For the Ford engine, the Red Tiger had a roar to it. But the Alice engine had more torque. Still a Ford guy, but... So that spark plug, if you can find one of the ones, especially in the small engine Stens, and I think you can find them on Amazon with that center electrode in there, or use a D21 spark plug, D23. Even a UD16Y, D16Y, just cut the side electrode off. You got your own little spark tester. Crazy? No. The 30 thousandths gap probably outside of the engine is maybe 5,000 volts, depending on the humidity in the air. Maybe. Well, when you're running these higher torque gas engines, industrial, commercial, construction, agriculture, you need 20,000 and to test it. Briggs and Stratton says it's a 10,000 volt test with their old style tester with a 0.166, 166 thousandths gap. Oh, it's 166 thousandths. It's right in the, what is eighth inch is 125 and a quarter, or no, yeah, eighth inch is 125 and a quarter is 250. So it's a little bit more, 40 thousandths, 41 thousandths more than an eighth inch. So that puts you up in the 3/16 category or so, 7/32. So it's a fair gap. It's not huge, but it's a fair gap. And it's in their little funky phenolic block with the little points, and you put your plug wire on and ground it here with a clip. And no, just stick one of these with a clip on. I have done it in the past, like twice, and I used them and abused them. I was able to drill into the side and start a sheet metal screw in there if you get the right size, and put a gator clamp on there. This one I think was a spot welded, so it didn't last long. I was banging around with everything that I had in the toolbox. But the wide gap, you're talking 20 to 30 thousandths volts, just with the center electrode to the side on the bigger plugs. The 18 millimeter plug is what they are. The D16Ys and the 21s and the D23s and such. And I guess they take 7/8 on the hex. They're big, but that wide gap is what you need to be sure that you have sufficient spark, not just to start and run, but to actually operate under power. I'll give you an idea. Now you say that doesn't make sense. So under compression, air and fuel are harder to fire. I don't know why. It's compressed so tight, it's harder to jump the gap because there's more molecules in there. I don't know what the exact reasoning is, but all that under pressure takes far more voltage to fire, and that's a fact. I've pulled things out and checked spark on the spark plug. Spark plug sparking fine, even opening the gap up and then putting the side electrode up and putting it back down. Put the spark plug in, fire up and run, and then start sputtering and skipping when you put the power to it. Pull the spark plug out, test good again. Put a new one in, runs fine. Why? Because it's shorting across. The insulator might be cracked, or in occasions the insulator has enough coating on it of carbon that I've seen the spark actually go down the side and ground down in that slot between the porcelain and the outer edge, actually follow the porcelain all the way down and ground from the center electrode instead of jumping that 25 or 30 thousandths gap. Why? Because there's a carbon track there that has less resistance. So you need that good solid spark plug, and you need that voltage in there to jump the gap. Well, spark needs amps. Well, it does, but you're only going to get so many amps across that the voltage can take with it. Voltage is your carrier. Amps is what makes it work. Yes, but if it doesn't jump the gap cleanly, solid, and reliably, your kernel's small. The size of the kernel is your amps jumping across it. So you need to have that test. It's critical. There's just no way around it. Next thing I have for you guys that are working in the antique tractor market, if you get one of those 10SI, I think it's called, the Delco internally regulated alternators that a lot of us like to use. Most of us have converted over to one wire, but if you happen to have the 3-wire, this is the adapter plug to go into the side where your hot lead's on the back, but this is the one that goes in that side hole there with the 2 terminals. Now, for many of you that don't know, and some of you are going to have a conniption fit, stop and listen carefully until I'm done. This is the number 2. As it goes in, there's your tab. Number 1 is over here. Number 2 is over there. The smaller wire is a signal wire. That's the one that tells you the key switch is on and starts the regulator working. I'll get to the problem with that here shortly. This one, quite a few times, people running back, the companies used to run them back to the key switch, doing the exact same thing that this one is, but they didn't want it hot all the time because some of them have an internal bleed in the regulator. However, when we're doing a conversion, almost 100% of the time, while this is plugged into the side, we bring this down, turn it around, and plug that rascal onto the hot terminal direct. Why do they do that? Why don't they do it internal? Well, because some companies want it different. And because of the aforementioned just teeny minuscule bleed in that regulator, at the end of a few weeks or a month, your battery's dead. Unless you have a monster like a 4DLT battery or something similar. Or a 31H or 30H or group 31. When you get up in those bigger sizes, they can generally handle it. But still, when you bring your battery down consistently and constant, that the lead acid batteries don't like it, because they're sitting at that discharge rate and keep going down. So it's not good. Cuts their life off. It's not horrible, but it's enough. But quite often, just turn that around and put it to it. Now, some other people will take it up and put it to the key switch right along with this one. Or they'll put one on the ignition and one on accessory. It really doesn't matter at that point if you want to be sure you cut it off. The purists will connect the two together. The guys that just don't want to monkey around with it. Well, there's a problem with that. With a gas engine and your electric solenoid diesels, same problem. This trigger wire goes back to the key switch. You see, I'm turning the power on and off. Well, yeah, you are, but everything is connected to the same terminals in your ignition system or your shutoff solenoid. So you turn it off, and this one backfeeds. It does. Just enough voltage to keep everything running. Sometimes you hear a pop and a snort, then after a while they'll shut off. But a lot of them will keep right on running. It's not enough voltage to actually operate very well. If you're out plowing the field and you shut the thing off, it's probably going to keep right on running. But there are times that you shut it off and you're under power. Well, the voltage drops enough, the ignition drops, and it'll stall on you right there. But what I've done over the past is Briggs & Stratton has, listen carefully, I don't have the part number with me, but Briggs & Stratton has a diode, an inline diode for their unregulated alternators on their small engines up to pretty large size, like 20 horsepower. Yeah, they have a 5 amp or so. I forgot there's a 3 amp, a 5 amp, and I think some of the later ones like almost 10 amps that are unregulated. They're wound so that you have to run the thing half throttle or more to actually charge the battery. And it's below that, it's kind of benign. But they have a heavy diode in that. And the diode is just, that's all it does is block. It's a 30 volt, 30 something volt alternator. When they put the diode in, they're blocking one side. So it's not a full peak. You're just getting one half of the AC peak coming out of there. So it turns it into, what do they call it, half wave DC instead of full wave. And the idea is to block any energy coming out at the diode, but you need a fairly heavy diode. I tried small ones in the past and they'd work for a while, maybe a day, maybe a week, but I stopped going to Radio Shack and I ordered the Briggs & Stratton alternator diodes. Just pick one of their old engines if you wanted to, like a 19707, and go look up on their parts list for the alternator for it. And that diode works excellent here. If you're fortunate, you can get both sides of the wire because the diode is here and the clip is next to it. And they actually have a clip that they can put in there for it, which would be unique when it came replacement time. You could put the diode up under the hood to keep it out of the heat of the engine, or if you have to, bring it down here. What I've done in the past, too, is used a butt connector, put it on here, and the butt connector, some of them are the exact size as the pin the diode is on, the connection pin. You put that on and you're golden to go. You'll just have to tape it or glue it to keep it from coming apart. Well, that's awful, Rube Goldberg. Well, if you can find the actual similar size diode to handle 5 amps or so, it probably only needs to handle 2-3 amps, but I'd get a 5 amp diode for longevity and be a little stronger, little less heat problem. And when you turn the key off, it stops. So that'll help quite a bit. But these things, Napa, are available. This one I've probably hung on to for 30 years because I haven't done that many conversions lately. Last but not least, this is a fun one. You think you have a Torx? Oh, buddy, you don't even have a Torx, do you? This is a T90. I had to double check it. I have 3 of them. One of them has a big old 7/8 back here, a hex back here. This one's a 3/4 or 19 millimeter. What did I buy this for? When I was working for Monroe Tractor over in Kirkwood, I found out that there's an awful lot of incompetence in the service departments all throughout the company. Terrible. I mean, total incompetence in a lot of stuff. And I asked for the tools and going on and for the information for this one particular job I was doing. They couldn't come up with the right service manual. They couldn't come up with the right service tools. They couldn't come up with anything. So I went out to the field, like they said. I found out what I needed for the tool. Went to Napa. I got a T70. Came back, and the T70 is huge. Well, found out, nope, that's not it. But I didn't waste a lot of money. Napa had it. It was there, and picked it up. It was in Cobleskill even. I recognized some people that I'd known in years past even. Run into an old friend. And when we came back out and tried it, it wasn't going to work. I tried heat. It wasn't going to work, so I just stopped before anything got damaged. I only used one bolt to get a little heat. I was trying to get enough heat on it to go back in, and I knew it was Loctited, and I even used it. Allen's, whatever. Finally, dialed up Amazon, ordered the things, and got them from Amazon, man. I forgot what it was. It wasn't even that much. But in the entire company in New York State, they had squat. Now, they might have had something in Rochester at the main branch, but nobody dared call there for some reason. They wouldn't talk to them, didn't want to know anything about them. Then I was to find out later on that there's a lot of management in the system that's no different than it was at Anderson Equipment. They're incompetent boobs that are behind the desk because they can't do anything else. And they talk and they bark and they're arrogant enough that it makes upper management feel good, so they put them in middle management. And they have very little clue what they're doing, lying, cheating, whatever. It doesn't matter. I ran into their area rep when he hired me, and I tried for 6 months to get him to talk about it. And then after a while, a customer came in, after a while, I had to make a break, so I got another job. Just said, no, it's time to go. The prior job before that because there was a customer from a previous company I worked at. I was working there, and things were going nuts, and I got screamed at by the stupid young punk service writer, and I said, I know these people better than you. You've been in the area, 9 months? You've moved up from the South? So it doesn't matter whether you're from the South or whether you're born in Pennsylvania like he was, so he should have known the North. But he was barking along like he was some God's gift to the world, and the customer sat there and said, well, we're tired of dealing with him. We want to hire you direct. So I got the job from there. And then Kabuki 19 came, and they took too long to rehire people back, and I said, my pride just can't have me laying around here at home. I had my Ferguson project done that was supposed to keep me busy, and so I went on and, tried Empire Tractor with a bunch of promises they had and didn't keep a one. And this was another piece of their incompetence. They actually had a fair tool room. I say fair. As much as I hate John Deere stuff, even in Kirkwood, the 5-star had better tooling than almost any place I'd been in the last 50 years, from my teenage years on up. Not even close. Oh, Empire Tractor up there, they got tools out the wazoo, and they're all busted. They said, well, you broke them, too bad for you. They throw them on the shelf, nobody cares. Why? And they said, well, nobody will tell us about it. The service writer said, nobody will tell you about them because you aren't going to fix them anyway, so why waste the time? That was a literal conversation when I was in there. I just laughed and said, oh, well, I ain't buying your tools for you either. So this one I bought for the Monroe with the idea that they were moving me over to construction, and they were supposed to bump my pay up. And they were supposed to have bumped it up before, so I should have had 2 bumps. I had talk, and that was it. So I ended up with 3 of these because that's the best I could do. And I wanted one with a larger section here because we were talking, hundreds of, not just, 50, 100, 150, 200. It was like 300 and some foot-pounds, 400 pounds of torque on these. And then I was a little anxious as to whether a 3/4 hex would be enough to hold it. Didn't worry about this so much because this end's going to hold it. But it's whether the socket that I was going to have to put it in would hold. Even with an impact socket, is it going to hold? Impact sockets are soft compared to chrome, but they're thicker, so there's a trade-off. It ended up working pretty good in the end result. But that's one of the things that tooling, sometimes you have to do what the company won't do, and you have to pick a point where there's only so much that you'll do. Unless you're a lone wolf, then it's all on you. What are you going to do? How far do you want to go? It doesn't matter which position you're in, you have to pick that point. Well, this is one that I said, well, it's a hand tool. And half of these would be warranted. I'm not even fully certain if I didn't get some of these off the tool truck. I think I did. Off of one of the tool trucks. If I did, it was probably Snap-on. Matco and Mac could go for the big automotive stuff and some of the heavy duty trucks, but nothing else. And all of them used to have stuff for Cummins. Beautiful too. They can't find them at all now. They don't bother. It's a heavy duty truck, but it's not in there. They want to sell you brake parts, easy, fast stuff. But still, I had to go to Amazon and got them. So that's about the end of what I was looking at today. The only other thing I can tell you is this is something that's funny in our household. It's been funny since I got out of college. I mean, you're talking 45 years here. It's just hysterical. So what in the world are you doing with a little six foot tape measure? Because almost everything, including some of your welding stuff, is going to be under 10 feet. We got a little bitty 6 foot tape measures. 5 foot are plenty for almost everything you're ever going to do. And the thing is, you have to have multiples. One place I worked, I went out, and I didn't even hardly have the money, but I went out and spent some of my lunch money even, and I bought a bunch of tape measures and handed them out to everybody. I kid you not, it was a week. They were asking to borrow mine again. They lost it. But make sure in your own toolbox, in the shop, you have 3 of these and one big one. Why? Because you might lose the big one, and these are back up. And you'll lose them because they're nice and small and handy. That's it for the day. The only other thing I had in the field for a short time is, and a lot of you already have this, but is the Leatherman. And you say, what? Well, there's different types of Leatherman, as you know, for what you're going to do. This was the big bad boy I bought in the end result. I had a Leatherman fuse they no longer made that was perfect for everything I was doing. This one has too much stuff in it to be for a mechanic type of job. I mean, it's got the fancy knife blades. I don't even think this has scissors in it. No, it doesn't. And scissors is something that's nice to have. Nice sharp blade. The only other thing that was kind of handy in here is a file. Yes, this is to remove hooks, and that's a hook file, but it is a file. So that can be handy for some things if you just need to trim something off. But everything else is in there. It's excellent quality. The cutters are replaceable. Well, I had the fuse with the non-replaceable cutters. I was cutting coat hanger left and right very easily. When I used, what's the name of that other company? Gerber. I had Gerber I bought from Snap-on. Snap-on was bragging about them. Every time I used them on a coat hanger, I shattered the jaws. Shattered every time. Without fail. Even trying to work it down into and then the clip shattered. A coat hanger. The coat hangers are hard. Well, yeah, they are, but not that bad. So, cutting fence wire, maybe the Gerber would be okay. Baling wire. But I highly recommend Leatherman. If you're a Gerber guy and you love your Gerber, keep it. Don't bother with anything else. The other pair I have is a Chinese Winchester. I think it was that somebody gave us for a present. So anyway, that's it for the time. I'm burning some time now, so I ate an early lunch, and then I'm going to go out to the shop here and get some stuff together. I've got shrubs to cut. You say, I thought you had work. I got work out the wazoo in the shop. But I'm also the home guy that's supposed to cut the bushes. If I cut the bushes during the week, I can get the weekend. And this weekend down in Rome is a benefit for David Uhouse. Apparently he had died. I haven't heard the whole story. And I worked with his son, David Uhouse Jr. We call him Huey. He was known as Huey in high school. Huey. After a while, we started calling him the Svid. Because the boss we had at the time treated him like dirt. He didn't actually treat him bad to his face, but he gave him all the crap jobs in the universe. I don't know what it was. He didn't like Huey. Huey was a quiet, confident guy. What he knew, he knew. He had his own opinion. He liked to speak his opinion, but he wasn't one of those that was... I'm more loud and boisterous than he was in a lot of things. And he and I rarely disagreed on anything, so we got along pretty good. But he says, I can't hang around with you. He says, why? He says, I'll be too busy laughing. I got work to do. You know, we thought a lot alike. I'd say something, and he'd burst out laughing because he'd already thought the same thing. So, and Huey was a half pint. Junior was half the size of his dad. His dad was a good Ford mechanic for many years. And like I say, when Huey was treated He he comes down and said, "So Huey, what are you up to today?" He says, "I pick things up, I put them down." Kevin comes by and he's, "Huey, what's up?" He says, "I pick things up, I put them down." Just like the commercial. And the commercial was phenomenal. I hope they paid that guy several $1,000,000. Light-haired, colored Swede that weighed 500 pounds and 6'3". I pick things up, I put things down. He carried something with him. Forgot what it was and what commercial it was. It was beautiful. Then Huey did it perfect. Well, he was a weightlifter too. I don't know if that intimidated the little weasel, but for some reason, Anderson, in their wondrous acknowledgement of his genius, hired the little turd at 29 years old to come down and be a manager in our branch down here in Endicott. He couldn't handle the customers. He couldn't handle the people in parts. He couldn't handle anybody in the shop when we didn't say anything. He'd be upset and call his boss that we didn't say the right words at the right time. He was a little pansy all over the place, and Huey was one that would say something back, but he felt obliged to bark at him. Hey, Jack. One of our English shepherds here. So, I have no idea why, but he treated him like crap continuously. He went and got plumbing stuff. He did a lot of plumbing work around there. He said, well, it's got to be done. Well, there are several of us that knew more about plumbing probably than Huey. But he got all the dirt jobs, and I just said, well, he's the last man on the totem pole. Well, he was. But if all you're going to do is give him crap jobs, he's been a mechanic in the past. He knows some of this stuff, and he wanted to be trained. No training, no work, no assistance, nothing. It was a bad deal for him. And finally one day we cleaned up, I think it was a third flood, I think. And Huey didn't even come in. He just quit in the spot because we'd cleaned up for 2 floods before. It was a disaster with a little jackass. And one of the floods was 2 weeks long before we just finally took over. It's 2 weeks or more. And then finally one day I saw somebody going across with a wand, and I said, had enough? He says, yep. And I said, I was thinking the same thing. I think I had a broom in my hand. And we started cleaning up, and he comes down and says, what do you guys think you're doing? You got work to do. And I said, yeah, we do, and we're tired of working in the slop. Because the drain system and the sewer system were connected together. Our building was the last one in the entire village that didn't have a check valve in it. So we were literally working in dry sewage. We tried telling everybody. I started yelling at people, and they still weren't listening. And then suddenly one day they decided, after we had a quiet revolt, we just said, nope, you're going to have to call your boss and cry and whine on the phone. Well, it was about an hour and a half later, his boss was down there. So what do you guys think you're doing? We're tired of working in dry slop and breathing it. And he got a little perturbed that all 3 of us yelled at him later. It's fire us if you want. We're not working in manure anymore. Human waste. And he, look, Karenko told you 10 years ago. That was Jerry Karenko, a former parts man who quit for the same reason. And this is like our 12th cleanup. I ended up with lung trouble from some of this. Seriously. And we cleaned up the shop, washed it all down, got through it, and the jackass Eastern manager that we had at the time finally decided to call the town or the village in, and the village came in and says, yeah, there's no check valve there. Why? We warned them that they needed to put a check valve in there, and they refused to do it. So here we are. Really? So they put the check valve in. Huey got stuck checking it and cleaning it out every week. Yeah, and it didn't need to be. It needed to be checked now and then, but not every week. Flood season, spring and fall, but not every week. Well, that was one of Huey's jobs. Yeah. So, and nobody else in the entire, nobody knows why they put that in that way. No one has any idea. It was cheaper. No one else in the entire region that we knew of had a check valve in their system that needed manual cleaning. It was a company being too cheap to get the job done right. So Huey'd had enough and left. We missed Huey. We were going to go down and visit him, Kevin and I, but we both got busy with some other stuffs in our lives. And Kevin had some serious things happen in his life that just life-altering type of stuff that just blows your mind. And kept on working. And I had some stuff going on. Had the lung infection, then a hernia from the coughing from the lung infection, so that we were kind of out of service there for about 4 years. We were still working our full jobs every day, but to get up and go home, we were exhausted. We were burned out. We were in our 50s, late 40s for him. Yes, Jack, I know you and Hobie are there. I'm home alone with the dogs without Debbie. So, and that's an idea that when you get into a business, don't just look at it as you're getting a job. You young guys coming out of college and out of your tech schools and whatever else, don't look at it as just a job. Look at it as when you walk in there, talk to management and see how they treat and handle people. See if you can walk through the shop. And don't necessarily even talk to any of the guys that are in the shop. If you get the chance, go ahead. Service manager, great, but you need to talk to some of the other guys that are in there. And the ones to talk to are the ones on the wash rack. The guys that are running the broom, the ones that are doing the new equipment setups and such, the ones that are considered on the bottom of the line. Even though they might be a better tech, they're the ones with that job. And find out how they're treated there. Are they paid enough for what they're doing to keep them happy there? Is the company actually training them up from the bottom? And then get out. I say this with tongue in cheek in a sense. If you can talk to the shop golden boy, fine, but I wouldn't get too excited about that unless you're working as an intern. Learn. You're going to be in his way. He's going to get angry now and then. Just do what you can to keep your tongue, nod your head a lot, and learn, because you can learn a lot. But a lot of guys I've found over the years, they're in the upper echelon, and Anderson Company is the worst of any of them. They do not like to share because someone else might come up to their level, and they don't want to share the information. Just a fact of life. They might train you on certain little tidbits and make themselves feel good, and that's the best thing you can do is ask a lot of questions that are, softball, and then work your way in. But the ones to really talk to are on the bottom line. The janitors, like I said, the wash rack, new equipment, used equipment guys, the rental guys, those are the ones you want to talk to find out how the company really treats their general employees. Are they all treated the same from the top down? Because they should be. It's rare. And sometimes you get a company that's even better, that has management in there that knows the individual personalities of the people that have been hired, sometimes without their knowledge as lower management. Now, I say that as a guy that is not impressed with any manager he's ever worked with, but maybe one, possibly, or two. And they were chased out by the company because they weren't yes men. They didn't make the phone call and tell them, this is what you're going to do. And they said, I don't think so. And they were that type. We know our guys. We know what's going on here. Just let us send you the report when we're done. What do you need? Oh, no. We need this, but we need it done this way. And two inexperienced guys sat there and said, look, we're inexperienced at this, and we're telling you this is wrong. And then down the road they went. So you need to find that out. And you say, why? Because if your manager is a yes man just running manure downhill, crap runs downhill, diarrhea. And when you find out that that's how the place works, you have to start thinking of one of two things. Is that the place that wants to hire you the most? And then take into consideration some of the other jobs, because you get out of college, you want that first job. You may learn a lot there. Then I'll give you another insight that they'll tell you. You want to get to a job and stay there as long as you can. And I was at one place in my last 45 years for 12 and a half years. And I was self-unemployed for 8 to 10 years, depending on how you looked at it, with driving a school bus and such. And 8 to 10 years was one of the greatest times of my life, even with a witch of a wife at the time, but an ex-wife now. Miserable human being. They were some of the greatest that I learned a lot, was able to do a lot. Was able to do my own as I needed, as the customer needed. It wasn't one of those like I ran into 5-Star where the customer demanded a wiring harness, and I go back and this stupid little pansy 30-year-old screaming in my face, you ain't getting no wiring harness, we already fixed it. And I said, no, you chopped a wire up and jumped it, which was fine for the technical testing. You had to do it. There's no wire ends, so you cut the wires close, bypass the original harness wire that you suspect the problem's in. And the problem didn't go away. It was a computer problem. So that was one of the tests. And the customer said, fine, we're a municipality, I want a new harness. I went back, told them, need a new harness. I'll go back, be able to fix both problems. And I had to go through that. So you need to watch those things. How does the service manager work with a service writer? Upper management after that in the branch, that's a different story. Parts man, learn how to work around the parts man. There's some of them like I ran into at Empire Tractor. They had a parts man there that never should have been behind the counter. Never should have talked to a customer. He should have been stuck back in the warehouse and left alone. He would have been fine. But his miserable nature was to everybody. They said, well, he had a brain operation and he isn't the same since. And I said, okay, yeah, but is that better or worse? And somebody said, believe it or not, we think it's better. And what's he doing here? Off the job, or even when he's, having a break, or you're not getting parts from him, for some reason he didn't feel the pressure, he'd talk with you all day long. Everything's fine. You ask him for information. When he's walking past, he'd be glad to get you information and work with you on it. Walk up to that counter around everybody else, he was jacked. So he was one of those people that learn those things. How does the parts department operate? At Empire Tractor, it's horrible. It was horrible. Everybody would look at you and treat you real nice, except that guy. You know what he'd do? He'd look at you and say, oh, that? I ain't got time for that crap. You're going to have to talk to one of them, and walk off. I said, well, why'd you even bother in the first place? Well, because it was something simple. Nothing simple. So I went back, told the other guys, and they said, so, who'd you end up with parts? And I told them what I went through, and they said, yep, he's a piece of work, but the parts department refused to make the changes. $60 spark plugs? Please. They took a $30 Kubota spark plug and doubled it. I didn't know that, so I'm getting spark plugs to work on my job. Explosion by everybody, other than the parts department that was smiling from ear to ear. Those are the things you need to learn as much. If you're an intern there, those are the things you need to learn. And note them. If you have to, write it down. And then when you get to the end of your internship, see if you can have an internship at another dealer and learn. But start at the bottom and then learn what management does above. And don't worry about the guys so much in between. And you say, well, wait a minute. The guys in between will or won't teach you as you go along. You're going to be starting down here anyway. So you'll find out if management is willing to help you along the way. And the guys in between, they may or may not. But the problem is that some of them there's performance reviews that came in years ago. And the performance reviews cause a problem in they'll tell a guy to come help you, but he can't help you because if he clocks on to training to help you, then they get angry. They want them to stay on the job. This is 100%. This isn't even close. They don't want the time put to training at all. And companies are cutting back in-house on training horrendously. I mean, we're talking detrimental. We're talking NASA bad. So you need to learn that as well. And just understand that they may or not be, whether they're happy or good or easy to get along with or not, they may not be able to help you because of the way the company is designed. Because performance, we want to be sure. Well, that's management talking that hasn't done the jobs or hasn't done them in a long time. So starting out, ask the questions on the bottom. Spend as much time with the service department management, or if you're going for parts, with parts department management. Find out the guy in the back that's handling the packages and such. If you're going into sales, same thing. Find out how much management's going to help you. And in your case, now all of a sudden you're in with the main office as well as your branch office, and find out how much help you can get from them if you need it. Find out what they give you for equipment and phone and your computers and such. And do they give you online services while you're out on the road? Or some of them, they make the excuse, well, you're going to have to do this, you're going to have to do that. And well, when they start making excuses, you're starting to get the idea that they'll tell you, yeah, we're here behind you. And as one farmer used to say, Miles Munson, oh yeah, they stood behind that tire on the tractor, way behind it. In fact, the third time I went back, they were out of sight. They were so far behind that tire. Well, that's what you run into in a lot of shops. Not all of them. Every once in a while, you run into one that's kind of mediocre. Those are the ones to probably grab a hold of, because the mediocre guys, if they know you're giving them a break now and then, you're not, going back angry at them or something else, and you're going to be angry now and then, but you know how to handle it properly. Then those are the shops you may end up making some of the best friends because you worked into them. You didn't work with them. You didn't work around them. You worked into them, where you actually build a working relationship at the shop, where sometimes you can just yell across the shop and ask a question and they'll give you the answer. Or tell you, ha ha ha, you're stuck with that crap? See ya. Honesty. That makes the biggest part. Time to go. 39 minutes and some odd seconds, and Jack is saying, "Daddy, Daddy." When Debbie's not here, the boys want me to play with them. Be good.